So the basics. Now these are things that you need to understand about the cube if you ever want to solve it. So first of all, let me give you a little bit of terminology so that you don't get confused while I'm speaking. I will try to avoid this as much as possible, but at one point or another we're going to have to use some form of notation, which means that I can explain to you what I'm doing, but it'll be easier if I just have a shortened version of saying it. So, first of all, if we're looking at the cube as it sits, the white face right now would be what I would call the up face, or even simpler, we're going to say U for up, okay? The bottom face, in this case, is going to be the yellow face, which would be D for down, okay? The front face will be the F face for front. Back face is the B face for back. R and L, right and left, okay? So if I were to say R means up on R. But when I say just the letter R, it always infers a clockwise rotation on that face. So in this case, still assuming that our front is red here, I'm just going to give you a different view. R in this case would be this way, right? Because that is a clockwise rotation. R prime, so prime would be the opposite, is a counterclockwise rotation. So this is R prime. Same thing here. This is easy in the front. F prime. Now it's a little bit more confusing with the L. You would think, just from doing this, if I say L, you mean up. That's not true, actually. L in this case is a clockwise rotation, which would be down, like this. The same thing applies with the back face. If you were to look at the back face and turn, this would be B. If you turn around and continue to do what you're doing, B is actually down, which would not make sense necessarily, because you always want to think, oh, it's the same as front. So there's some simple notation. I'll try to only save it really for the last layer, but you should need to understand that. Another thing that's important you need to understand is that the centers on each of these sides correspond to their color. So that side is going to be white because it has white. And it's easy to see here because they're all together. And that's going to be green and red and blue and so on. But when the cube is entirely mixed up, while that fact may have seemed simple before, it is extremely important now, because that is how we can determine what side is going to be which. So we know, even if there were no red pieces on this side besides that one center, we know that is the red side. And the reason for this is because the centers are fixed. So this is just basically a piece that's connected to a core, and it rotates around it, but the piece itself never changes its orientation. So the red is always going to be opposite of orange, and white opposite of yellow, and blue opposite of green. And it's always going to be in that orientation, unless you take off the stickers or switch something, which do not do, and which I'll be able to tell you if your cube is solved later, if it is solvable, but it won't really matter until the last layer. But yeah, if you just have a regular Rubik's Cube that you bought and you just scrambled it up and now you have no idea how to solve it and you're frustrated, don't worry about it. As long as you haven't really tampered with it, it should be fine. And even if you have, I could show you how to fix it. So, but yeah, so that's important to understand, because that's how we determine what we're doing. And even just with that simple tip, a lot of you could probably figure this out. Solving a cube is really not that hard. That's basically all I knew. And then I just played around with it for a really long time and applied some logic to this chaos in order to solve it. So that's important to understand. These are edge pieces. Edge pieces have two colors. So always remember, if I say edge piece, it's two colors. And these are corner pieces, which is simple. They have three colors, okay? So those are some basics you need to understand about the cube. Now, this whole process is as difficult as you make it. One of the things that people often do when they're solving a cube is they try and solve it by colors. So they say, oh, okay, let's see, I'm trying to solve the yellow color. Alright, well, I'm just going to put all the yellow colors on one side. Yay, I've got one color. And then they go, okay, well, let's solve the green, and they just proceed like that. But they don't realize, and then they get stuck because they can't solve the green, because the way you've solved the yellow makes it almost impossible to solve the green unless you would alter the yellow. As you can see here, that's because you actually have not solved the yellow. You've solved the yellow color, but you've not solved the yellow side, or that layer. all you have solved is put the colors on what's called orienting them in the right direction. This piece doesn't belong here, if you can see. This piece right here is red and yellow. It belongs right here, but yet we had it over there. So what you actually have to do, if you want to do this, one second. Okay, that would be actually solving. You actually need to put each piece in its correct position. And this is something that people don't do. And this is something that you need to know, is that you cannot simply attempt to solve colors. You need to make sure you solve pieces in their correct positions. The last thing you need to understand in order to solve Rubik's Cube is, if you attempt to solve the cube in its entirety, or attempt to undo what has been done to the cube currently, you're almost certainly bound for failure, okay? The whole goal is not to undo what has been done, but to create something new, but to put it into a state that is solvable. So my goal in this is not going to be to undo the moves that scrambled it, because there's like 43 trillion possibilities. The chance of me finding that exact sequence is just almost impossible. And for our sakes, it pretty much is impossible. But rather, I'm going to apply a logic to this chaos to make it work. So I'm going to solve it by layers. I'm going to build it like blocks up until I'm done with it. So it's important you guys understand these little concepts in order to be able to solve it.